The concept of herd immunity has been debated since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, but not without controversy. When will it happen, or not at all? What is our current understanding of herd immunity? NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us some answers.
Herd immunity is often mentioned in the media as a target to be achieved, or the golden threshold where the COVID-19 virus is somewhat kept at bay and life goes back to normal. Some would suggest it might just be around the corner. Take a look at this Times headline from the 3rd of February. Given the dire situation facing India right now, perhaps there was something wrong with that assumption. A recent dynamic modelling study by University College London says that the UK has reached effective immunity threshold of 68% already on the 25th of April. Effective immunity threshold is related to herd immunity. Estimates about when herd immunity will be reached vary. Most estimates are in the 60 to 70% area. The New York Times quotes America's chief immunologist Dr. Anthony Fauci as saying in December, "We really don't know what the real number is. I think the real range is somewhere between 70 to 90%, but I'm not going to say 90%. I spoke to Professor in Medicine Dr. Paul Hunter to clear up the issue. He says you need three things for herd immunity to happen. Firstly, enough people need to be immune to stop the spread. Also,
you've got to have a immunity that actually lasts more than just a few months. And also you've got to have a virus that doesn't mutate and doesn't generate new variants that can overcome herd immunity and then start spreading again. And I think the answer to all of those three questions is we're not going to achieve that for COVID.
Also, regarding the new variants,
we know a lot now about new variants that are appearing, and the evidence is very strongly that many of these new variants, the South African variant and possibly as well the Indian variant, or likely the Indian variant, will be able to overcome, at least in part, immunity of vaccination.
Meaning the vaccines may not be completely effective against those variants. Professor Hunter says even with natural infection, as opposed to via a vaccine, people can start to become infected again 3 months down the line.
There is still protection from a natural infection, and valuable protection, but it isn't complete enough to enable herd immunity to really develop.
The consensus among epidemiologists is that COVID-19 is here to stay.
I've been saying for many months, our grandchildren's grandchildren will be getting COVID, but hopefully by then it won't be anywhere near the degree of severity that we've been seeing this last year.
I asked him how long we might expect for the restrictive measures to stay in place. He says as more people are immunised, we will come to live in a balance with this virus.
And I don't expect that we will be still needing anywhere near the degree of social distancing that we've had this winter in a few years' time. And I hopefully don't expect to see that this coming winter.
But he says it is difficult to predict, particularly with the occurrence of variants. The speed of getting vaccinating people is also a factor. Professor Hunter says there are far more cases of COVID around than they would expect to see. This is speeding up the mutation of the virus. He says this is because we have not had prior exposure to the virus.
Even when we are infected, we carry a lot more virus. And the more virus there is, the more likely a mutation might arise that could ultimately lead to a new variant that would cause concern.
Public Health England is investigating the Indian variant. They have not yet labelled it as a variant of concern. As far as herd immunity goes, there is still much debate, and in reality, there is still much that can happen. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
The International Olympic Committee is warning athletes they will face punishment if they protest during the Games. Committee officials say it's to safeguard the field of play and official ceremonies.
Athletes looking to make a statement out in the field could be met with punishment from higher up. The International Olympic Committee says athletes who protest by kneeling or raising a fist at official Olympic sites will face punitive measures. According to the Commission's report, the measures are meant to protect the field of play, official ceremonies, and the podium. The Commission also found that roughly 7 out of 10 athletes of nearly 3,500 polled feel it is not appropriate to demonstrate at Olympic events. Slogans like Black Lives Matter are not allowed. The head of the International Olympic Committee said any protests and demonstrations or acts perceived as such should not be allowed in those venues. On the other hand, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee says it will not punish athletes for raising their fist or kneeling while accepting medals in Tokyo. That's as long as they were taking part in so-called racial and social justice demonstrations. The Tokyo Olympics are set to start on July 25th.
Organizers are testing out ways to run the Tokyo Olympics during the pandemic. Japan is in a state of emergency with just 3 months before the Games.
Tokyo Olympics organizers tried out a hybrid mixed zone at a Paralympics test event on Monday, where some athletes appeared in person before reporters and others spoke online. Since test events restarted this month, this was the first time that athletes turned up in person to the mixed zone, a staple of sporting events where they speak to reporters straight after competing. On Sunday's track cycling test event in Isu, organizers scrapped a planned in-person rider interviews. Instead, 4 riders were selected to appear on an online meeting platform at the end of the day. Barriers for the mixed zone were set up but went unused. Paralympics organizers are trying to figure out how to hold events safely as Japan battles the global health crisis. Japan declared a state of emergency for Tokyo and 3 other areas from Sunday until May 11th, less than 3 months before the Games are due to start.
The pandemic has hit hard apparel retail over the past year. But Paris-based auctioneers of luxury fashion items say their sales are exploding online. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Art Curiel's auction house overlooks the shuttered boutiques of Champs-Élysées Avenue in Paris. Here, vintage fashion expert Clara Vivienne oversees the online sale of hundreds of Chanel jackets, shoes, and accessories. Paris may be the world's fashion capital, but a third pandemic lockdown is once again sending lovers of luxury who have time to spare and money to spend online.
I think because people have time to spend at home to find out the value of what they have and if they could sell it, or on the other hand, to buy items, which is another means of consumption, people can't walk into luxury boutiques, and so they shop at online auctions.
Vintage was already enjoying a revival, and handbags sell particularly well. Auctioneer Antoine Saunier said vintage fashion sales are exploding online.
For a sale that we used to have around 100 subscribers 2 years ago, we can have 5 or 10 times this number sometimes, depending on the kind of sales. It's totally different. It's an explosion of sales online.
He says for the past year, there hasn't been a physical fashion week, but that's not stopping them.
Paris remains the capital of fashion. There's no doubt about it. And with our exhibitions for auctions, it's maybe the only fashion exhibition at the moment. It's our job to do our little fashion week through our sales.
He says his auction house is preparing to sell nearly 600 Vuitton artifacts for its little fashion week. Traditional catwalk shows are still not permitted. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A luxury hotel restaurant in Amsterdam has turned to takeaway service during the pandemic to stay afloat. It's now serving up an upgraded take on a humble classic. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Amsterdam initially balked at the idea of offering burgers for delivery. Then the pandemic hit. Without guests or open dining rooms, hotels and restaurants in the Netherlands have had to turn to other services.
Well, in this period of time, in the middle of the pandemic, you get more and more creative and flexible, and it doesn't matter what you serve, but it needs to be good, need to be the best of what you can do, and need to be the best of town, at least of the competitors. That's the most important.
The Waldorf signature burger comes with an 8-ounce Holstein Friesian meat patty, topped with English Duke of Berkshire bacon, aged Dutch cheese, and homemade relish on a French brioche bun. Uber Eats reviewers have given it 4.8 out of 5 stars. Hundreds of weekly orders have made the burger a success, but they won't compensate for a prolonged ban on inside dining that could extend for months. Crafting the perfect burger took serious research, and Shoot was apprehensive at first.
I was a little bit against it because I'm not a big fan of sending food out what is warm, what is hot. And so I was a little bit nervous, you know, like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be okay? So we did a lot of trial cookings.
Dutch plans to ease some lockdown measures have been pushed back until April 28th at the earliest. In the meantime, the burger is here to stay, and it may even become a permanent fixture on the Waldorf menu when normalcy returns. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Italy is easing COVID-19 restrictions in some regions, so Italians are eager to flock to museums and reconnect with their friends over an aperitivo.
In Rome, museums and theatres are welcoming visitors after the government eased COVID-19 restrictions on Monday. It comes as the capital and other regions moved into a yellow zone with fewer COVID-19 restrictions. Without crowds or long waiting lines, visitors could admire the ancient masterpieces up close, though restrictions over social distancing remained in place. Theatres and cinemas are also allowed to reopen. Drama lovers rushed to Teatro Vascello, where productions were back on stage after months. And Rome's famous Colosseum reopened for business too. One visitor from Florence was delighted.
I'm
really surprised the Colosseum is open. I thought it would be later, but I'll take this opportunity immediately because this will be the only chance. I hope this will really be a reopening and not a kind of hiccup like last summer.
The amphitheatre is one of Italy's most visited landmarks, but there are virtually no foreign tourists in the capital. Bars and restaurants are now able to serve people seated outdoors in certain regions. So Milan residents rushed to bars to enjoy an open-air aperitivo.
This is what we have been missing for quite a while. So we are happy, and we want to live and go back to a normal life.
Venice is not yet crowded, with tourists riding down the canals on gondolas. Some residents enjoyed their iconic spritz near the canals.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees.